Yo, what's going on, everybody? So today I want to talk about something that you guys have raised in the episode 130 episode review, which is the fact that Boruto's changing the timeline. Now, that's something that I myself talked about in the episode review, but a lot of you guys are saying, hey, did you notice that Boruto gave Denki's father the idea for the Thunder Train? Did you notice this? Did you notice that? A lot of people have the theory that Kashin Koji could actually be Jiraiya because of what's happened in this whole thing with Boruto going back in the past and meeting Jiraiya. And so I wanted to really dive into this because the more I got to thinking about it, the more I realized, okay, this is actually something very fascinating. Now, I'll be real with you. I think that if they did decide to go the route of having Kashin Koji be Jiraiya, this could be one of those moments where this actually would make sense if they altered the timeline in some kind of way. But at the same time, I think that if you do this, it's still gonna cheapen the death of the Jiraiya character. So I do want to kind of throw that out, that I do have mixed feelings. I go back and forth whether or not that actually be a good idea. But when it comes to Boruto just changing the timeline altogether, I think that this is something definitely on the table. Because let's just look at when they first show up in this part in the timeline. Like the turtle that they have immediately tells them, like, you can't interact with your people you have close connections with. You can't interact with your past self. If you do, you could destroy the timeline. You could destroy the future you're from. You could cease to exist. Those are very dire warnings. And yet when you see Boruto's just yucking it up with Hinata. He's sleeping in the same bedroom with Naruto. They're sharing ramen together. He's giving Naruto all these different recipes for ramen that hadn't even been invented yet. You're getting so much interaction. You see Boruto interacting with Denki's father without him even realizing it and giving him the information to basically start the process of building the Thunder Train. But what that's essentially done is made me wonder whether or not the time travel that we're getting is going to be something completely different than any of us expected. So I think Anime Balls Deep got off to a really good start. Okay, so when I was talking to Adil, and at the same time when I was watching this review, he talked about the bootstrap theory, okay? And one thing that he pointed out was, basically following that theory that essentially things can change, but at the same time, we're gonna get back to that same point. And I wanna kind of piggyback on that, but I wanna take that a different direction. So let's look at like the three major time travel laws, okay? Or the three major forms of time travel in fiction. So you basically have what's called a single continuum. So basically what this is, if you guys are familiar with the Harry Potter series, okay? So in Harry Potter, we find out that if something's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. The only thing that changes is the fact that you can go back and you can view things from a different perspective. Clearly, the Boruto series is not going on this type of a time travel. It's something that they might borrow concepts from this, but it's not something we can expect. And it's the same thing when it comes back to the fixed point. I think that this is something that very well could be something that the Boruto series follows, which is basically with the fixed point timeline. That's something that you see in Terminator, where no matter what John Connor does, he sends people back to the past all the time. He never prevents the rise of Skynet. He never prevents the key things from happening. So essentially, if the volcano is going to erupt on this day, it's always going to erupt. So to put this in the Naruto perspective, if Sasuke was going to leave the village, he was always going to leave the village. No amount of interference can prevent something like that from happening. So in this time travel arc, we are seeing that there are certain elements that are in this so far. Now we're 3 episodes in. Like, we still see that Naruto's still gonna go train with Jiraiya, but those events might be slightly different. And that brings me to the third type of time travel, which is basically where you have the alternate universes, where there's basically infinite timelines that are created based on the different interactions that are going on. So that's something that I said I thought could very well be it, where essentially they're gonna borrow some of the stuff that happened in Dragon Ball, where they just create a whole different timeline. And I think that given the fact there's a very real possibility that Sasuke uses Genjutsu, makes everyone forget everything that happened in this time, it makes me wonder whether or not this is going to be a fixed point where essentially no matter what they do, it's not going to change the events of the story. And that will fit back into what happened when you got to the warning that turtle from the Sasuke clan is giving them, saying like, look, if you do anything, you could essentially wipe out the timeline that you're from. So given how Boruto's interacting, I think that this is going to be it. I think that essentially none of the stuff that happened in the Shippuden era is going to be affected, but I also think that there is the possibility that they borrow some from the Infinite Timelines part, where if you want to hang your hat on the Kashin Koji's Jiraiya theory, given the fact that Sasuke is interacting with Jiraiya, he could be telling him about the Sasuke clan. It could be one of those things where Jiraiya, much to a lot of our surprises, actually fakes his death in the pain arc. Now, again, I think it would cheapen the character, but it's something they now have given themselves a bit of wiggle room to explain it. It's one of those times where now we understand why Kashin Koji could know as much as he does. I don't want to spoil it for anime onlys, but Kashin Koji is a character that has a lot of intel on everything that's going on in Konoha, and he would only know that ideally if he was Jiraiya. So I mean, this is very interesting. I do think that, again, there exists the possibility, but given the fact that we've seen hints that, okay, the Thunder Train happened, okay, so Boruto makes Denki's family very rich. When you look at the next thing, if Sasuke meets Itachi, does that mean it's going to stop Itachi from dying? Not necessarily. So I mean, I think they're following more so from the fixed point type of time travel law, but they're borrowing from so many different forms of time travel that it's so hard to peg down. But if I had to put a percentage on it, if I had to put a percentage on saying what's the likelihood that Boruto will change the timeline for the worse, I'd probably give it like a 35% rate. I really think that Anime Balls Deep had it going in the right direction with the bootstrap, but I also think that it's also going to be borrowing very heavily from the fixed point, where you can have people from the future interacting with people in the past, but it's not going to change anything that's going to happen. So I want to know from you guys, how do you guys see this time travel arc actually playing out? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.